Hi friends, welcome to Programming Made Easy. This is Santosh Avalamurthy. Today we are going to see a very important topic, that is how to do database programming using PyODBC module in Python. All of us know that database programming is one of the key concepts in the development of any applications. Majority of the applications that we develop today will have one or the other database as a backend. So knowing how to do database programming in Python is very important if you want to develop any useful applications. So do subscribe to my channel if you have not already subscribed, and also click the bell icon to get the notifications whenever I post new videos. Now let's see what is database. So many of you might be aware of what is database. For those who are not aware, I'm just going to explain very easily what a database is all about. A database is nothing but a collection of information that is organized so that it can easily be accessed, managed, and updated. Now, if you talk about a database, there are actually two kinds of databases. One is a relational database and another one is a non-relational database, or popularly called as NoSQL database. In today's demo, what we are discussing is for a relational database. Now, in case of a relational database, the data is stored as tables, and every table will have rows and columns. In case of relational database, the number of columns remains same for all the rows which are present in a particular table. So the PyODBC module is designed to provide access to any database for which an ODBC driver is available. Very shortly, I will show you how to check if a particular database ODBC driver is available in your system or not. Now, when you talk about database programming, there are few steps involved. So they are, first is to define the connection string. A connection string helps us to connect to a database. So we'll be seeing how a connection string looks during our hands-on experience. Then connect to the database. Do the database operations, like you can create the tables, then select the data, insert, update, and delete. So when we talk about a database operation, majorly we'll be involved as a programmer in four operations. That is select, insert, update, and delete. So since this is not a session on the SQL, so I expect you to know a little bit of SQL in order to do any database programming, because internally we'll be using the SQL statements to do the database operations, that is our select, insert, update, and delete. Once you are done with the operations, close the connection to the database. Now, why it is important? Database is also a resource like our file or memory. So there will be specific number of connections defined for a particular database. If we connect to the database and we don't close the connection, then that connection will stay like that, And once you exceed the configured number of connections, no one else will be able to connect to the database. So it is a very, very good practice that whenever you do database programming, once you open the connection to the database and once you are done with your operations, we need to close the connection. Let's see how it works. So we'll write a program to connect to the database and then insert some data to the database. Now for this session, I will be using SQL Server database. So this is the database which is present on my system. So it is local to my system, and this is my database name, that is students underscore DB. This is the table which we are going to use. So as you see now, there are no records present in this particular table. These are the fields: student ID, first name, last name, date of birth, it is integer, standard string value, section is a string value. Now, when you are naming the columns of a particular table, normally the first letter indicates the type of the data for that particular column. Normally we use I or N if it is integer, F for float, S for string, like that. So currently I don't have any records, and also iStudent ID, for iStudent ID I've created a sequence. So this number will be generated automatically through a sequence. Now what is a sequence? So sequence gives you the next number whenever you call that sequence. For example, if the sequence is starting from 1, when you call the sequence again, it returns you 2. Now, how do you find the ODBC drivers that are present in your system? Very simple. From your search window here, if you are in the Windows system, search for ODBC. So this shows you data sources ODBC. Click on that, then go to drivers, then you will be able to see all the various drivers that are installed on your system for different databases. Now if you see here, I am having drivers for Postgres SQL database as well as SQL Server database. So since we are going to use SQL Server as the database, I need to use SQL Server related drivers. So I'm going to create a new file which we are going to create to do the database programming. So this is going to select Python. Now in order to do the database programming, here since we are using PyODBC, I'm going to import PyODBC module. If you don't have PyODBC module, you need to install it using pip install PyODBC, and also I'm going to use sys module to exit the program if I am not able to connect to the database. Now as per the steps we saw in our PPT, first step is to define the connection string. So I'm already having my connection string here, which I'll be using. So our connection string is equal to this. So let me save this file. db test. Now, whenever you see a connection string, basically it will have multiple attributes which we have to define. Now, the first one is the driver, which indicates your ODBC driver. So as I just mentioned, the driver name should be same as the one which is installed in your system. Next is the server name where the database is installed. Since this is local to my system, so I've given it as localhost. The database name is students underscore DB. This is the user ID and password to connect to the database. So once we have the connection string available, so let's see to try to connect to the database and whether it will work. So the second step is connect to database. So whenever you are using or working with database or file operations, it is always a good practice to do the exception handling, because whenever your resource is not available, so you can inform to the end user, and also you can gracefully exit the application. So I'm going to put try. So I'm going to create a connection object, that is PyODBC dot connect. So I have to pass my connection string. So if the connection is successful, I'm going to put a message, database is connected. So connected to DB. Except exception as E print str of E. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to connect to the database. If I'm not able to connect to the database, I'm printing the exception here, and I will also exit the program, because if I'm not able to connect to the DB, so obviously I will not be able to run my queries. So once we connect, then we'll prepare our statement to execute. So prepare the query. So I'm already having my query here, so which I'll be copying, query equal to I'll explain what this query means. So it's an insert query. So what we are doing, we are inserting to student underscore details table. These are the field names which I explained, and these are the values. So here for student ID, I'm calling this next value for SEQ underscore student ID. This is my sequence name. So whenever this is called next value for the sequence name, it returns the next sequence value. The one with question mark indicates these are the arguments which we need to pass. So let's define our arguments or values which needs to be inserted. So for that, I'm going to declare a list, and to the list I'm going to append the values in the order that we need to insert. So append. Now here my first field after the student ID is first name. So I'm going to give it as Samarth. So I'm going to add all my values. So please note that whenever you are appending the values to your list, they should be in the same order that you need to pass to the query. Otherwise, the wrong data will get inserted to wrong field. Sometimes the data itself may not get inserted because the data type is wrong. So Samarth as. So my third field after first name, last name, it is the date of birth. So I'm giving date of birth, it is an integer value. So I'm going to give date of birth in Unix format, some random date here. So 142192180. So this is the Unix time for any of the date. Normally it will be 10-digit number. Then standard and section. First standard A section. So once it is ready, next step is to execute the query. Again, whenever I'm executing the query, I'm going to put it under exception handling. So first thing is to create a cursor object which shall be used to run the queries. So connection object dot cursor. Then to execute the query, you can call cur.execute my query, that is query, and then the values, that is 2 underscore field. So once the query is executed, we need to commit it. So if any exception, then we will be printing the exception message. Close the connection. And terminate. So if everything is fine, my final step is to close the connection, that is con dot close. So let me explain what we did here. We imported the module, that is PyODBC and sys module. Sys module is optional because I am using sys.exit in case I am not able to connect to the database. So I am using it to exit, otherwise it is not required. So we are defining our connection string. So we have to give the driver name, server name, database name, user ID and password to connect to the database. You can get the names of the drivers by typing ODBC, and when you go to driver section, you will see the list of drivers which are installed in your system. Depending on the database you are connecting, you need to choose the suitable driver. Then first step, connect to the database using connect function, and if you are able to connect, then prepare the query. So here in the query, the arguments are passed here, and to pass the arguments, we have declared a list where we have appended the values in the same order of the column names that we are using in the insert statement. So insert statement will always insert a new record to the database. So then you get the cursor object, and then use execute command, pass the query and the values, and once the query is executed, we need to commit it and finally close the connection. So now we are ready to run the program. So let's see what happens. Okay, so it is connected to the DB as well as the command is executed because we didn't get any errors. So let's go to the database and see if the data is inserted. So you can see that student ID is already inserted. So now we will see how to read the data that is present in a particular table. So let me comment this portion of inserting the data. So now the query we need to write is select query. Query equal to select star from student underscore details. Now what select star will do, it returns all the rows of the particular table which we are passing. Now to execute the query, again let us have a try catch. I'll get the cursor object, then rows equal to char.execute query. Now since we are not passing any data to this query, there is no binding is required. So there is no need to pass this additional list. Second thing, since it is the select query, it gives the output as the rows. So these rows will be stored in this variable rows. Now to check what data is there, you can have for row in rows print row. Now this rows is basically a list and each row is written as a tuple. Now if you want to access a particular column, you can say print row of 2 or 0 or 1. The columns will start from 0. So I have given it as I'll give as 1 because 1 is my student first name. Exception as E. So if there is an exception, we are going to print the exception. So what we did, we wrote a select query to get all the details of the students. Then we created a cursor object. We executed the query. The output of the queries are stored in a variable. Then you loop the variable to get the row data, and you can access any column by using the column index. So save this and let us run this particular program. So as you can see, the rows are written here. As I told, each of the row is a tuple, and then I can access the particular column by using the index. So since all my rows are having the same data, so you're seeing the same name here. So this is how we can extract the data and read out the data. So that's all folks about how to connect to the database using PyODBC, how you can run your queries. So let's get back to the PPT here. I hope this session helped you all. So this is a very basic requirement for any programmer. So you should know how to connect, you should know how to connect to the database and run your queries, because this is what we'll be using most of the time. So in my last video, I had covered how to process the files, how to read and process different types of files. And in this video, I have covered how to work with database. So with these two combinations, we will be able to do majority of the programming aspects, and you will be able to develop a very nice applications. Basically, it is combination of file processing as well as the database programming. So do subscribe to my channel if you have not already subscribed. Like it if the content was good, share it and give me your comments how to improve these sessions more and more. Thank you so much for watching my video. Till the next video, take care, bye bye, stay home, stay safe.